is going on, Dallas Cowboys fans, Cowboy Nation all around? The Dallas Cowboys have now wrapped up the rookie minicamp process of the yes, I want to say the Cowboys off season. We're talking about from young guys, Tyler Guyton, Marshawn Nealon, Cooper Beebe, Maurice Lafau, Kalen Carson. This is a few names. The Dallas Cowboys are looking to be I'm gonna say very vital pieces to the Dallas Cowboys upcoming season. Mike McCarthy spoke glowingly about these are just some hard working guys, especially in the case of talking about Tyler Guyton and a Cooper Beebe. These are guys that are looking to potentially be projected as of right now, looking to be starting offensive line for your team at the left tackle position and maybe possibly the center position if Cooper Beebe is able to come in there and beat out a guy like Brock Hoffman. This is going to be very exciting. Throwing in, again, a Maurice Lafau at the linebacker position and a Marshawn Nealon, who's not been talked about in the sense of being more of a pass rusher, which Mike Zimmer, he loves those tough physical guys that can set the edges at the DN position. And I'm going to say that's going to open up so much more for a guy like Micah Parsons, who's already been talked about a little bit, that he's going to play a lot more linebacker this upcoming season. And to me, that's nothing to sneeze at, because what that opens up it's just many more adjustments that you can make, and the offense is going to have to make, because now you have Micah Parsons back to that role where he's all over the entire field. And a Marshawn Nealon, we talk about how as physical as he is, I feel like he has some untapped, I guess you can call, pass rushing ability that hasn't been spoken about a little bit. And obviously throwing in a guy like Kalen Carson, potentially, we'll see exactly the situation goes at shoring up this cornerback position. Obviously Trayvon Diggs is going to be returning. We're talking about now an all-pro in Deron Bland, who's still developing, but who showed himself now the interception leader, pick six interception leader in NFL history for one season. They're talking about a guy like this, a Kalen Carson, who I feel like has some flexibility, who you can move around a little bit. And going back to that linebacker position, a Maurice Lafau, who's going to be able to maybe find himself in some competition with a guy like a DeMarvion Overshown. You do have Damone Clark returning, still a guy that's developing his own game. You do have the veteran presence that's going to be Eric Kendricks, who we picked up this past offseason, or this offseason. So the Cowboys have a lot to look forward to. I believe the next thing, looking forward for the next thing for the Cowboys is going to be a voluntary minicamp, I believe, on the offseason schedule. So we'll see how exactly that goes. But obviously the number one thing that teams are talking about right now is the NFL schedules have been released for the 2024-2025 seasons. It's very exciting because obviously one thing that we already say, especially coming off the NFL draft, the number one thing is it kind of goes around throughout the entire league. It doesn't matter how bad your season was last year. Doesn't matter how unfortunate, in the Cowboys case, your season ended. There are always going to be lots of expectations and lots of just hopeful thoughts, because at the end of the day, everybody's 0-0 right now, and you're adding some new pieces. And we also, at some point, we always see teams that are maybe not that good, and they go into the very next season and end up having a better, a much more improved season. So this is going to be a very exciting time. But obviously, when you're looking at the NFL schedule, the number one thing you're always going to be looking for, who is going to have the toughest schedule based on the opponents that were from last season? The Cowboys are going to be able to look in, and I'm going to say obviously now, there are some key games that we're going to be looking for. The number one thing you always talk about for the Cowboys especially, who are these Thanksgiving matchups? How exactly are the Cowboys looking around Thanksgiving? Who are some of the tougher opponents we're going to be facing off? Because we did win the division last year, and it's going to be very interesting to see. But let's take a look at this schedule, the early schedule, and kind of see what we think about some of the opponents that are going to be on there. According to ESPN.com, the Dallas Cowboys schedule for the 2024-2025 season, you can see in week 1, it's going to be the Cleveland Browns. This is going to be a team we're going to see if Deshaun Watson is able to bounce back. We knew he was dealing with some injuries. We do know that I guess you want to say the special player. We look at, I believe they're going to be getting Nick Chubb back. We'll see exactly from that injury that he faced last year. And then seeing Myles Garrett. We know that the defensive presence, the defensive player of the year, Myles Garrett. This is going to be a very tough opponent for the Cowboys to face week 1. But to me personally, I love these early tough games because, and we're talking about obviously, every year is different. You don't know how exactly the dynamic changes year in and year out. You're adding new guys, you're taking away new guys. Some guys are now going to be able to develop, but we'll see exactly what this looks like. But again, just facing off against a tough opponent in week 1 against the Cleveland Browns, that's going to be a good test for the Cowboys right out of the gate. Then now you look at the New Orleans Saints in week 2. The Baltimore Ravens, obviously MVP Lamar Jackson, two-time MVP Lamar Jackson. We obviously know Dak Prescott was the overall runner-up in the MVP voting this last season, and it wasn't even close though, because I believe Lamar Jackson pretty much got predominantly all the first place votes. So this is going to be something for the Cowboys to be able to test themselves. We see Dan Quinn, of course, he always loved to move guys around, and sometimes it would get us in a little bit of a trouble when you're facing against the physical team that likes to get the ball on the ground. And so you see Mike Zimmer, that's to me where I feel like he holds his hat a little bit more. He wants this Cowboys to be more physical, whether in the trenches in general. So it's going to be exciting to see how exactly the Cowboys are going to be able to handle the dynamic of having a guy like a Lamar Jackson, because you do know any play with Lamar Jackson out there can take it to the house, because you always have to worry about him on the ground, worry about him through the air, because he's a very capable passer himself. So the Cowboys, this is going to be a situation. Now you can kind of get into what your predictions are of the schedule. I usually don't like to do that too much, because sometimes you never really have an idea of who's going to be where, especially when we're talking about right now. You haven't even really touched anybody in training camp. You haven't seen exactly who's going to develop. Who sometimes you see some players teeter off from what they were the year before, and that's not even just on the Cowboys. I mean it on other teams around the entire league. So this is going to be now going into week 4. It's going to be interesting to see. But you're going to week 4, division rival, obviously. Longtime NFC East division rival, the New York Giants. We do know it doesn't always even matter the schedule. Now, the Cowboys handily took care of business against the Giants last year. But this is going to be something that you always are going to have to say. It's a division game. You never know what the dynamics are, because the Giants did add a couple things during this past offseason. So you're going to be able to say, you know what? They're going to come in ready to be physical and show exactly that they are an improved team. Now look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, we do know this is going to be on the road. You're having a Mike Tomlin team. They're going to be tough. They're going to be physical. Of course, you don't know what exactly the dynamic is, because they do now have Justin Fields in that quarterback room. You have Russell Wilson in that quarterback room. So this is going to be interesting to see what the Cowboys are going to be able to do on the road, because you have already seen when the Pittsburgh Steelers, I will say a Mike Tomlin team, it doesn't matter if they have the most talent in the league or even in their division on that any given year. One thing the Steelers will do more times than not, they're going to fight you. You're going to find yourself in a battle. Going to week 6, Detroit Lions. We can already talk about how exactly that late season matchup played out for the Dallas Cowboys in the Lions game. The Cowboys should have lost. Cowboys won. The Detroit Lions blew it, whatever it is. The Cowboys came out on top. So you know the Detroit Lions are going to come in here ready to kind of prove a point. A Dan Campbell-led team. Again, kind of the same way I said. A very physical opponent, because you know the Detroit Lions, I will give them lots of credit for Dan Campbell especially. He came in there and changed that culture. He changed that mentality. A lot of times you saw the Detroit Lions, a lot of times people could come in on the schedule and write them off as a free win a lot of times. Now let's be clear, you still have to get out there and actually make it happen, because paper means nothing. But the Detroit Lions, they are a physical bunch, and they take pride in getting into these physical games and actually just trying to show that they can take these games into late fourth game. I guess you want to say find them in late fourth quarter situations. And you see Jared Goff, no matter what your opinion is of him, he's a capable NFL quarterback. He's a guy that belongs as a starting quarterback in this league. So another tough opponent. The week 7 bye week. I feel a little iffy about that, because especially we're talking about adding that extra regular season game now, week 18. You're playing 17 games. Having a bye week in week 7, it could be an issue, but I'm going to say the number one thing, it's going to be able to give you a viewpoint of where you are in that first 6 games of the season. So hopefully, if you're the Cowboys, you can come out and maybe pull down a 3-3. And I don't want to say 3-3. That's to me on the lowly end. But if you could let's say if you look up and say the Cowboys pulled out wins against the Saints, pulled out wins against the Giants, the Steelers, maybe the Lions. And let's be clear, I never try to chalk up losses, because you don't know how games are going to play out. Last season, I will give the Cowboys some credit. They did battle a little bit. We can go back to the Bills game. We can go back to the Dolphins game. Now they came up short. Let's be clear. I don't believe in moral victories, because at the end of the day, a loss is a loss. You have to come out on top, because that's what the postseason shows. I don't care if you win by 1 point or 20 points. You have to come out on top. But if in case I'm not talking about moral victories in general, I'm not ever chalking up automatic losses. I'm not saying the Cowboys are coming out here and losing to the Ravens. I'm not saying the Cowboys are coming out and losing to the Cleveland Browns in week 1. These are going to be some tough games. I'm not going to come out and say they're going to lose to the Detroit Lions. But these are going to be some games that Cowboys are going to be able to test themselves. So having that, I'm going to say week 7 bye week, it's going to be very interesting to see if the Cowboys can come out there with I guess you want to say somewhat of a hot start, and see if they can set themselves up for the rest of the remaining of the regular season. Coming in week 8, the San Francisco 49ers. We do know the whooping that we took from the San Francisco 49ers on the road last season. This will be another road game. It's going to be on NBC, Sunday Night Football, and you can go back and see the Cowboys in prime time. That Thursday game early in week 4 is going to be a prime time game on Amazon Prime, I believe, 7:15 p.m. But you're looking at the Cowboys playing against the Steelers. You're talking about the Cowboys playing against the 49ers. You're talking about the Cowboys playing against the Texans, which is going to be a Monday Night Football game. another primetime game. The Cowboys are going to have to come out there and be ready for the San Francisco 49ers. I'm not even in the mindset of you want to come out here and try to prove yourself, because you can say matchups are always going to change. A regular season game in week 8 doesn't mean much to me if this is going to be your postseason opponent once again. But if the Cowboys are able to come out here and show some, show some effort and show we are a different team. We're not what you've gotten used to. We're talking about teams with 12-win seasons, but it seems at some point we're still losing to some of the better teams, beating up on teams that we're maybe evenly matched with or that are worse than us, because when the postseason comes around, you're playing against more times than not the best of the best. So you're going to have to come in there locked and loaded. San Francisco 49ers in week 8 will be a great test for this team on primetime Sunday Night Football. The Atlanta Falcons, now you having Kirk Cousins and also drafting a guy like Michael Penix Jr. out of the University of Washington with a top 10 pick. The Falcons are going to be interesting to see, because as a Texas Longhorns fan myself, obviously that monster they have in the backfield of Bijan Robinson. This is going to be an exciting game for me personally just to watch, because you do know at any point they do have some talent out there. You're talking about a Kyle Pitts, you're talking about a Drake London, and the Atlanta Falcons from the receiving game, the passing game, I'll say. And Kirk Cousins, as much as I talk about him, I crack jokes on Kirk Cousins at certain points, but Kirk Cousins is still kind of like the same way I'll compare him to a Jared Goff. He's a very capable NFL quarterback. He's a guy that can beat you on any given day. So you have to come in there ready, locked and loaded, because they do have some weapons on that Falcons offense. Let's be very clear. Obviously, and then week 10 versus the Philadelphia Eagles. This is going to be a home game, Cowboys Stadium. It's going to be an afternoon game, 3:25 p.m. on CBS. Week 10, we know the Cowboys, Eagles. This is a rivalry amongst rivalry games in the entire NFL, but especially the NFC East. These games, we saw the Cowboys. It seems for majority of the season, it felt like we were kind of chasing behind the Philadelphia Eagles. Once they got out to a hot start, and once they would not slip up, they're winning these close battles, and all of a sudden the Cowboys are losing some of these close games to the Bills. You're losing close games to the Dolphins. Now you see the Philadelphia Eagles take control. But what we did see, they also teetered off, and I'm talking about the Philadelphia Eagles towards the end of the season, allowing the Cowboys the opportunity to take over this division and win the NFC East title. And I know the Eagles are going to come in completely ready to kind of find their own retribution for how the late season for them ended last year. And then they lose again early in the playoffs too. So the Cowboys, Eagles, we have very similar seasons. We have now quarterbacks that are kind of touted a little bit, and then at some point you see them not play their best, and they're going to get lots of criticism. So the Cowboys, Eagles, as always, in week 10, this is going to be very interesting to see going forward. Week 11, the Dallas Cowboys versus CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans. Luckily, I will say, me personally, I'm going to say this right now. The Houston Texans are one of those teams we can look at them potentially in a couple years and say they're on that same trajectory as the early Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not necessarily saying they're going to start winning Super Bowls out of the gate like that, but CJ Stroud is a monster at the quarterback position, and he came in year 1 and showed the league that they have a lot to be afraid of, because this is a guy, if you bust a coverage, if you're out of place, he will beat you. They have too many weapons on this offense. We're talking about guys, even a long time, we're talking about the Cowboy, Dalton Schultz at the tight end position, but you're looking at some of these other guys that they have. They are not going to come in here. We're talking about Nico Collins. We're talking about these are some guys that the Cowboys are going to have to be very attentive of, because one thing you're going to say, Trayvon Diggs, he's coming back from an ACL injury. There are so many things that you have to kind of be, I guess I want to say be cautious about, because of course we're going to come in here and say, we know Trayvon Diggs is a playmaker when it comes to taking the ball away, but this is going to be a little bit where I'm going to say maybe it's going to take a few weeks for him to potentially find himself back in NFL shape, because you can do all the running, you can have all the contact, and sometimes we can talk about going through training camp, going through practices, going through preseason, and if he plays, and I feel like he maybe play a little bit during preseason. You don't want to test him too much, but you do want him to go out there and try to find that confidence to be able to play an NFL game on that recovered ACL, because you can always talk about, yeah, he feels healthy, he can run. We're talking about with no pads, no real contact. But at the end of the day, the actual NFL game is much different. So the Cowboys are going to have to be very aware of a young team like the Houston Texans with a new head coach. This is going to be just something that the Cowboys are going to have. And of course, we're talking about a team in Houston. You want to have that ownership and those bragging rights, at least for the next couple years, because we usually play, every 3-4 years, something like that. So you want to have that control, and you want to be able to say, we have that over the Houston Texans right now, because you have seen, again, CJ Stroud is nothing to take lightly at all from the quarterback position. Week 12. The Washington Commanders, they have now brought in Jaden Daniels, I believe, with the number 2 overall pick out of LSU, the Heisman winning quarterback from LSU. Of course, it's going to be a rookie year, a long time Dallas Cowboy defensive coordinator these last few years at least. Of course, and it's kind of believed if Mike McCarthy was no longer going to be here, if the defense didn't have the fall off that we saw in the postseason and towards the end of the season, but especially in the playoffs, you were going to say maybe Dan Quinn was going to be the future head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. But now Dan Quinn took on that same role, the head coaching position with the Washington Commanders. This is a whole new regime for them. They have lots of changes they want to make, and now they have a quarterback. They have a new head coach, and they have a guy that I feel like Dan Quinn. We could talk about some of the issues towards the end of the season, of course, and obviously in that Packers playoff game. But now we're talking about a guy we do know he can move guys around. He can find some chess pieces. So the Cowboys are going to have to be aware of that. Mike McCarthy and the rest of this offensive coaching staff in general are going to have to be very aware of that, because also when you're talking about what is going to bring maybe breathe in some new life into a team like the Washington Commanders, having a new quarterback, like I said, Jaden Daniels, is going to be something to keep your eyes on going forward. Again, in Week 13, Daniel Jones and the crew are coming to Dallas this time in New York, another division rivalry game. Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow, he's been dealing with some injuries these first few years in his league. Obviously, we do know Joe Burrow early on takes the Cincinnati Bengals on a run to the Super Bowl and comes within one possession of winning that Super Bowl. Joe Burrow, we know what those guys are. Jamar Chase, these are some I'm gonna say some special playmakers. Let's be clear, these are some guys that are gonna come in here and be able to show that the Cowboys are actual solid team. Because one thing you can always talk about, and this is gonna be another Monday night football for the game for the Cowboys, a 7:15 p.m. starting time. This is going to be under the bright lights. You're going to be at Cowboys Stadium. Joe Burrow, wants to continue to make a name for himself and show that he can stay healthy. And when he is healthy, he's a premier quarterback in his league. So Micah Parsons and the crew, this D-line, especially, we're talking about adding a couple extra guys and throwing in some guys back in the mix of DeMarvion Overshown, like I said, Maurice LaFleur, who I'm very excited about as a rookie out of Notre Dame. And I feel like he's not being talked about as much as he maybe can. Again, we're talking about, it's not like he's a top 2, top 3 round pick for your team. So this is going to be a guy where you're looking at saying, I believe Maurice LaFleur can be something the Cowboys are going to have to come in here and show that they have some playmakers that can make something happen against a quarterback, a very premier quarterback in the league when he's healthy, Joe Burrow. Week 15, the Carolina Panthers at Carolina. We do know that rookie. We're talking about now. You're looking at seeing what exactly are we going to be able to say about a team like the Carolina Panthers going forward. Still a young team, still a work in progress. The Cowboys handily took advantage and took care of business against them last year, but we know this is a whole nother aspect. They brought in some new guys, a Jonathan Brooks at the running back position, a guy, again, a Texas Longhorn, a JT Sanders, another guy, a tight end from Texas Longhorns. These are going to be some guys that the Cowboys are going to have to be aware of. And sometimes these young teams can be very dangerous when you're talking about in a grand scheme of an entirety of a regular season. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Week 16, a team that gets hot last year. Baker Mayfield kind of went there and found a new place to call home. Obviously, having Mike Evans still there, they're going to be a very dangerous team. We're talking about a team that got hot and made the playoffs. And actually, they were not talking about a team that even, I feel like you can say maybe just snuck into the playoffs. This is a very capable NFL team. So another Sunday night football game as of right now. We know sometimes we'll see where these teams are later on in the season. Sometimes that'll end up changing the schedule around. The league will see exactly who are some of the better matchups and more important games. But we'll see if this thing sticks. But as of right now, that's also a Sunday night football game. So another primetime game for the Cowboys to be able to show themselves. Week 17, Philadelphia Eagles. You're looking at the Philadelphia Eagles on the road. And it's funny, we're talking about December 29th start. It's going to be right after Christmas. You're looking at the Philadelphia Eagles and the Cowboys. Is this going to be another late game matchup that's going to come down to who's going to win the division? We will see, because, again, you're talking about Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown. We're talking about these guys, Devontae Smith. And then the flip side, hopefully we're able to get this thing done, which I feel like we will at some point. Nothing's going to bring that CeeDee Lamb contract to get done more than pressure of the regular season actually getting closer and closer. You can say all you want to say. You can say, hey, we have some other guys that can get the job done. at the end of the day, you cannot take a CeeDee Lamb off the field and say you have the same receiving threats, because that's just not, it's common sense. We're talking about an all-pro, potentially, in my personal opinion, we're talking about top 2, top 3 best receiver in this league as of right now, CeeDee Lamb. So we'll see if this December 29th matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia is going to come down to who's going to win the division. Also, the Washington Commanders, again, week 18, we'll see if that game has any importance. But the Cowboys, as of right now, the regular season for the 2024-2025 schedule, like I said, it's been released. There are going to be some tough matchups. There are going to be some matchups the Cowboys are going to have to come in here and show. Yes, we're playing against a young team, but we're going to have to come in ready, locked, and loaded, because although you do have some different matchups, this is still going to be very interesting to see, because we know at the end of the day, I mean, the Cowboys fan base, we're talking about the Cowboys in general. 12-5, 3 straight seasons. At the end of the day, no one cares about that with no playoff success. But you have to use this regular season to prepare yourself for the postseason, prepare yourself to get better and better each week. And I will give Mike McCarthy credit for that. He loves to just say, we try to look at this thing in increments. You want to continue to get better. You want to be playing your best by the end of the season, prior to, and I guess you want to say in comparison to just playing better early in the regular season. Of course, now if the Cowboys will go 17-0, we'll be all for that. But I want to see this team just continue to get better. But with this regular season schedule now finally released, you know the Cowboys can now kind of somewhat envision themselves on what we potentially can get done going to the next season. So now, once again, the Dallas Cowboys season schedule has been released for the 2024-2025 season. Now getting that out of the way, of course, like I said, rookie minicamps just officially wrapped up. The very next thing on schedule for the Dallas Cowboys will be voluntary OTAs, I believe, May 21st to May 23rd. So that's not too far around the corner. So the Cowboys be able to get some of these veterans in here with the mix of some of these young guys and just get the group together and just start to build that chemistry, because we do know at the end of the day that chemistry is what's going to get you through these dog days of the season, these lulls of the season, when you start getting bang-ups and injuries, games start getting more tough, more physical. That chemistry that you're building throughout the offseason is what's going to get get the Cowboys, especially through these tough moments of the season. So I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share. The Cowboys are starting to ramp this thing up again. We're going to continue to get these videos out now, especially more frequently, like I said, with voluntary OTAs and things coming up. And then, of course, now you're looking at starting to get yourself ramped up for training camp, things like that. So it's going to be very exciting around here, adding in some of these new guys, seeing how they mesh with some of the veterans. I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share. Let me know down below in the comment section who you're most excited about playing this upcoming season. Is it a matchup against a team, like I said, in the Baltimore Ravens? Are you ready to see what the Cowboys can do against a physical opponent? We're talking about the Brock Purdy-led San Francisco 49ers. There's just so much to kind of look forward to. It's going to be very exciting. We'll see what the Cowboys are able to get done. But you guys are amazing. Go Cowboys, and as always, enjoy the rest of your day.